the news.
Hi, I'm Tessa with Brainrot News with a few bits of news for you to choke on for March 18th. In today's next episode of Late Stage Capitalism, House Democrats are demanding answers about Trump's Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, which sounds like a meme, but is actually a real-life bureaucratic nightmare. Reps Jamie Raskin and Gerald Connolly filed a Freedom of Information Act request, basically asking, hey, what the hell is this thing actually doing? Because at this point, DOGE appears to be operating with less transparency than the CIA's black budget. Here's what we do know. DOGE has access to sensitive government data, but refuses to say how much. It's using AI for undisclosed operations, which is always real reassuring. It's firing federal employees at record speed with no clear legal authority. Its staff consists of Musk loyalists and right-wing Silicon Valley rejects, whose main qualifications seem to be owning Dogecoin and tweeting bad opinions. Democrats want to know who's actually working there, what they're doing, and whether any of this is legal, which, given that Doge operatives have been casually strolling into federal buildings and restructuring entire agencies, seems like a fair question. Don't expect answers anytime soon. If Musk is running Doge like he runs Twitter, the official response will probably be a cryptic meme and a promise that the woke mind virus will be eradicated. In case anyone still needed proof that Trump and Putin are running a long-distance relationship that should be classified as a national security threat, the two had a friendly little chat about a limited ceasefire in Ukraine. Now, before you get your hopes up, let's break this down. It only applies to energy and infrastructure targets, so civilian areas are still fair game. Trump is, of course, patting himself on the back for this diplomatic masterstroke because in his mind, every problem is just waiting for his golden touch. He called it a preliminary step towards border peace efforts, which is like slapping a mission accomplished banner on a sinking ship. Putin, who has spent the last 3 years reducing Ukrainian cities to rubble, played along. Because why wouldn't he? If Trump is willing to help launder his war crimes into a negotiated peace, he might as well let the useful idiot do his thing. Less than an hour after the call, Ukraine got a lovely little response. Air raid sirens blaring and explosions lighting up the sky as Russia unleashed another round. You know, just in case there was any confusion about what Putin means by ceasefire. It's like when the mafia makes you an offer you can't refuse. Ukrainian President Zelensky is treating this ceasefire with all the trust of a Nigerian prince email, because he knows exactly what's happening. Trump is trying to sell out Ukraine in exchange for a diplomatic win that benefits exactly two people, Trump and Putin. Donald Trump is once again demanding that people who do their jobs need to be punished for it. This time, it's U.S. District Judge James E. Boasberg who had the audacity to rule against Trump's attempt to deport Venezuelan immigrants using a law so old it probably had to be dusted off by a museum curator. Yes, Trump is trying to use the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, a relic from the days when powdered wigs were considered peak fashion, to justify mass deportations. Next up, bringing back leech-based medicine and revoking the right to vote from anyone who isn't a landowning white man. Oh wait, that last one might already be in the GOP's 2026 platform. Trump, ever the connoisseur of temper tantrums, called Boasberg an unelected troublemaker, because apparently he just discovered how the judicial system works. Newsflash, Donnie, judges don't have to win popularity contests because their job is to uphold the law, not kiss your bloated orange butt. Chief Justice John Roberts had to step in and remind Trump that no, we don't just impeach judges just because they refuse to rubber stamp authoritarian fever dreams. But who needs logic when you have a cult that thinks losing the popular vote means you're chosen by God? So now the Justice Department is trying to boot Boasberg off of the case, because in Trump's America, if the law doesn't work in your favor, you just change the judge. In today's edition of How Many War Crimes Can You Fit Into One News Cycle, Israel has resumed bombing Gaza because ceasefire talks fell apart. Again, because that's what happens. Because that's what always happens. Because peace is only an option if it comes with a side of complete Palestinian submission. The January ceasefire had resulted in a hostage exchange that could be generously described as wildly lopsided. 25 hostages for nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners. But when Israel demanded more hostages and Hamas didn't immediately comply, Netanyahu ordered airstrikes that killed over 400 people, proving once again that his preferred negotiation tactic is kill them until they agree. Hostages' families are terrified because when the bombs start falling, there's no such thing as collateral damage, just more dead civilians, conveniently labeled as legitimate targets after the fact. This war has been going on for a long time, and at this point, the only real question is, how many more generations will be sacrificed on the altar of blind nationalism? Trump's entire existence is fueled by spite and late-night McDonald's binges. He has now revoked Secret Service protection for Hunter and Ashley Biden, because of course he did. Now, in a vacuum, maybe you could argue that taxpayer-funded security for adult children of presidents should be limited, but the problem? Trump himself did the same exact thing for his kids, on the taxpayer's dime. At one point, 18 Secret Service agents were assigned to Hunter Biden's trip to South Africa. Sounds kind of bad, right? Until you realize that Trump's kids, Ivanka, Don Jr., Eric, and whatever the other's name is, were living like royalty under government protection while simultaneously making business deals on the side. So to summarize, Trump's kids got security, totally fine. Biden's kids get security for a few months, outrageous, corruption, deep state. The pettiness is truly Olympic level. Give the man a gold medal and a participation trophy for his 53rd attempt at pretending to be a dictator. Nothing screams making America great again like gutting the one organization literally dedicated to preventing wars. Trump's administration just fired the entire leadership of the U.S. Institute of Peace and replaced them with hand-picked loyalists, because if there's one thing history has taught us, it's that authoritarians hate independent institutions. For those unfamiliar, the U.S. Institute of Peace is a congressionally funded nonprofit that focuses on conflict resolution and good governance, two things that make Trump break out in hives. Its job is to, stop wars from happening. The purge was spearheaded by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, Secretary of State Lowell Marco, the lightweight choker, and National Defense University President Peter Garvin, all of whom have the combined diplomatic expertise of a bar fight in a Buffalo Wild Wings. Their first move? Firing USIP President and CEO George Moose, because nothing says effective governance like turning a peace institute into an unhinged episode of The Apprentice. Moose, to his credit, isn't going quietly. He's suing, calling the takeover illegal, and he has a point. He's right. Congress established USIP as an independent entity, meaning the White House shouldn't be able to seize control of it. But since when has legality ever stopped this administration? Just to make sure things feel really dystopian, the takeover involved staffers from Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency. The institute tried to call the police for help and were promptly met with the cops opening the doors for Elon's cronies. The justification for this coup? Trump's executive order to reduce the size of the federal government, which in practice means defunding anything that isn't actively making him money or starting wars. USIP isn't the only target either. The African Development Foundation and the Inter-American Foundation are also being gutted, because why settle for one diplomatic disaster when you can have three? So now, instead of an institution dedicated to global stability, we have a shell of its former self, led by a Trump yes man, acting President Kenneth Jackson, a man with all of the qualifications of a Craigslist landlord. Expect the new USIP to focus less on peace building and more on finding excuses to invade countries that still have oil. To anyone thinking, well, at least the US still has other peace-focused institutions, let me stop you right there. This isn't just about one agency. It's about normalizing the destruction of independent institutions that keep authoritarianism in check. When a president can unilaterally dismantle an organization just because he doesn't like what it stands for, that's not just bad policy. That's how democracy dies. Now for today's installment of Things Trump Pretends to Care About. We have AutoPen signatures. Yes, the man who spent 4 years tweeting state secrets and signing blank pieces of paper with a Sharpie is now outraged that Biden used an AutoPen to sign presidential pardons. Trump himself used an AutoPen, but now that Biden did it, it's suddenly an existential threat to democracy. Why? Because some of those pardons went to people involved in the congressional committee that investigated his failed coup. So to recap, Trump uses AutoPen, business as usual. Biden uses AutoPen, constitutional crisis. Over the weekend, in a spectacle that would make even Orwell do a double take, the Trump administration deported over 200 Venezuelan immigrants. Not back to Venezuela, but to a maximum security prison in El Salvador. Because why limit yourself when you can commit human rights abuses across an entire hemisphere? This little act of state-sponsored kidnapping was justified under the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, which, in case you didn't catch it before, was written before the invention of modern plumbing. Trump is using a 226-year-old law from the John Adams administration to justify rounding up immigrants and dumping them in foreign prisons. Nothing screams small government like an authoritarian dragnet straight out of a dystopian novel. Of course, the official excuse is that these deportees were allegedly gang members. The problem? Most of them didn't even have criminal records. Take Franco Carballo, for instance, one of the deported who managed to make a desperate phone call to his wife before he vanished from all U.S. detainee records. Nothing says law and order like people disappearing into black sites. Families of the deported are left in the dark, desperately searching for their loved ones, while the Trump administration shrugs and mutters something about national security. His supporters will cheer it on because nothing gets the MAGA base more more excited than needlessly traumatizing immigrant families in the name of patriotism. Venezuelan officials are calling this what it is, a kidnapping operation sanctioned by the US government. And while MAGA fanatics will celebrate this as tough on crime, let's be real, this isn't about crime. If it were, half of Trump's own administration would be in handcuffs. No, this is just another chapter in Trump's endless campaign of xenophobic cruelty, a man so insecure that he needs to ruin immigrant families for sport just to feel powerful. If this is what making America great again looks like, I'd hate to see his definition of dystopia. If you thought climate change denial couldn't get worse, Trump's Department of Government Efficiency just proved you wrong. Their latest move, laying off 75% of the EPA's research staff, because apparently the best way to protect the environment is to stop studying it altogether. The EPA's Office of Research and Development, aka the part of the agency that does actual science, is getting the axe. That means 1,155 scientists are about to be shown the door. Nothing says government efficiency like firing the people responsible for keeping your drinking water from giving you cancer. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin, because who better to run an environmental agency than the guy who hates environmental regulations, is slashing 65% of the EPA's budget, because Trump's goal isn't just weakening environmental protections, it's obliterating them. DOGE's operatives are also raiding the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration to scrutinize diversity and inclusion programs, because if there's one thing that threatens national security, it's a black scientist studying hurricanes. If you weren't already stocking up on bottled water, now might be a good time to start, because not content with just laying off all the scientists, EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin is also rolling back environmental protections like it's a speedrun challenge. His latest agenda? Weaken emission standards so power plants can pump out even more pollution. Loosen restrictions on toxic metals from coal plants, because who doesn't love a little extra arsenic in their water? Gut wastewater regulations to make sure corporate polluters have zero consequences for dumping chemicals. Roll back climate change research, because if you stop measuring global warming, maybe it'll just go away. Former EPA administrators are freaking out, warning that these rollbacks could undo decades of environmental progress and literally make people sick. Zeldin, like any good Trump appointee, doesn't care about science. He cares about boosting profits and pleasing Overlord Trump. So get ready for dirtier air, undrinkable water, and a planet that's just a little bit closer to being uninhabitable. If you thought AI was just for generating bad art and writing soulless corporate emails, think again. Europol just confirmed that organized crime is using artificial intelligence to supercharge everything from cyber attacks to fraud to child exploitation. Apparently, we weren't content with just letting billionaires and corporations ruin AI. Now we're letting the mob get in on the action too. According to Europol's director, Catherine DeBoll, AI has made crime faster, smarter, and harder to track, because it's doing for criminals what steroids did for baseball players. Except instead of hitting home runs, they're hacking banks and running billion-dollar scams. So what exactly is AI helping criminals do? Oh, just some light dystopian nightmare fuel. Deepfake scams. Criminals are now using AI to create hyper-realistic deepfakes of politicians, CEOs, and even family members to manipulate people. Imagine getting a video message from your boss telling you to wire a few $1,000,000 to some offshore account, only to later realize that it wasn't your boss, but an AI-generated clone created by hackers. AI-generated child exploitation material. It's as horrifying as it sounds. Criminal networks are now training AI to generate fake child abuse images, which are impossible to track back to a real victim, because the victims are real in this situation. This victimizes children. This exploits legal loopholes and floods law enforcement with an overwhelming tsunami of a digital horror, making it even harder to find and rescue the actual victims. AI-assisted money laundering. Remember when laundering money required fake businesses and shady accountants? Not anymore. AI can now generate shell companies, create fake transaction histories, and move money through complex crypto networks faster than regulators can even begin to track. AI-assisted money laundering. Remember when laundering money required fake businesses and shady accountants? Not anymore. AI can now generate shell companies, create fake transaction histories, and move money through complex crypto networks faster than regulators can even begin to track. Wait, it gets worse. Because it always does. AI isn't just helping criminals operate in the shadows, it's actively helping authoritarian regimes as well. Europol notes that some of these cyber attacks are blurring the lines between profit-driven crime and state-sponsored hacking operations, which means that half of these AI-powered scams could actually be coming from governments like Russia, China, or North Korea. Silicon Valley insists that AI is going to be the best thing to ever happen to humanity, while Europol is panicking about AI making crime unstoppable. example, tech billionaires are too busy selling AI-generated girlfriend simulators and launching chatbots that can't even tell the difference between sarcasm and a customer complaint. Thanks for watching Brainrot News. Be sure to like, subscribe, and invest in a gas mask since the EPA is now just a vibes-based organization.